Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our training session on credit card processing in Connected. This will be a pretty specific training session on how to set up and configure the card processing in the Connected software. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover today. We're going to go through the simple basics of card processing and PCI compliance. We're going to do the bulk of the presentation will be on specific how to use credit cards within Connected. So we're going to call that Card Processing 101. We'll go through the setup, the different transaction types, viewing, deleting customer cards, emailing, printing payment receipts. And then if there's anybody that isn't processing cards and is just curious, we'll just go through how you can sign up to start and configure that. So the card processing basics are pretty straightforward. Connected can perform live credit card authorizations and or charges from right within the application. Our exclusive payment processing partner is BluePay. We have a little logo there on the bottom right. And for all card processing in general, and of course specifically with Connected, we always need to talk about PCI compliance, and that's payment card industry compliance. It's a security protocol, and that's basically about how to manage and store credit cards. And Connected is PCI compliant as far as how it operates. And PCI compliance is something that as a merchant or somebody that accepts credit cards that you will probably be tested on and quizzed on by your merchant provider, and in this case BluePay, at least once a year to ensure that you are PCI compliant. I won't dwell on this topic much more. We have a great blog on our website, which I'll show you in just a moment, about some of the myths about credit card processing and specifically on PCI compliance. But it's a topic that everybody needs to learn about when you're accepting credit cards. So that brings us to Credit Card Processing 101. So this is basically going to be how do we set up and use credit cards in Connected. And this is going to be a pretty straightforward review of the process and the setup. So without mincing words, we'll just get started here and move right into the setup. So I have Connected open in a pre-configured file that is ready to go with the card setup. So basically the first thing that you need to do is sign up for a BluePay account. And once you sign up and have initiated your account, you're going to get an access to log into a BluePay portal, and you'll be able to retrieve a set of credentials. Once you get those credentials, you can enter them into Connected. So Connected does have to be unlocked. You do have to contact us for an unlocking code. Once you receive that code, the BluePay features or the processing is available. And then you can simply open up your bank's window, and I'll just click on this bank account, and you put in your credentials. Your credentials are added at the bottom. So what you get is what's called an API login and a transaction key. These are big, long identification numbers that are the access to your account. So those values are put in here, and once they're saved, assuming that they're correct, your account is essentially live. So that's how it works. It's very straightforward. Moving from there, and I'll just save this. And I do have an account set up, but we just don't expose the credentials in an online setting. So we'll move to the types or how to process credit cards in Connected. And this is very straightforward. You can process a card from 3 areas of the program. The first one is the sales order, the second is the account invoice, and the third is a receipt. And they all kind of have a different reason that you might do something. So we'll start with the sales order. So in the sales order window, I'm going to bring up an order that I already have configured. It's for a BluePay sample customer, and I've already done a little bit of work on this to expedite the presentation. So once we have an order entered and our credentials set up, under our action menu, we have Charge Credit Card as an option. So if I open this window, hit Charge Credit Card, I get the same window that I would get anywhere else that I charge a card. They're all identical, so it's all the same interface that we use. Now you have 2 options. You can authorize and charge, or authorize a card only. So if I was to authorize and charge, that means I'm going to process the card and it's going to be sent to the merchant provider, in this case BluePay, and they will process the card and the funds will get deposited upon settlement. So it's an actual card charge. An authorization only might be something where you take an order from a customer, you take the credit card information, you don't want to store the credit card information anywhere else, which you shouldn't. So you authorize the card and then the card becomes available to be reused in the future, but you don't know the card number and the details with it anymore because they're gone, but the card has been successfully verified as a valid card. So what I'll do in this case is I will pick, and you can see I have an authorized card that I did before. So what I'll do to start with is I'll authorize a new card. So we'll go through that process and then we'll do a charge. So to do that, I just have to bring up a card that I have. I have some sample cards. These are invalid card numbers, but we use them for our processing samples. So we'll pick Visa here. We'll paste that card number in. And then I'll obviously have to put in a valid expiry date. So I'll just do 12/19. I could put in a security code. I don't believe that matters for a card authorization. I'll just do 236. Security codes are never stored. You're not allowed to store those codes. And then I'll put in the name of the card. And actually in this case, what I'll do is we'll put in the name. We have sort of a Christmas theme going here for this demonstration. I'll copy the billing address direct from the customer's window. And once I do this, the information from the customer's window appears. If that's not correct, obviously you'll need to change it. But if it is the actual physical company address that is the card address, that's important. And in this case, we have an email address that's been copied here. And I would always urge caution, because when you put in an email address here, the customer will get notified if their card is authorized or if their card's charged, which can be a very handy tool. But also, you just need to understand that your customer is receiving that piece of information. So all my details are here, and I'll just hit authorize card only, and I'm going to get a authorization result. And my response list is here. So if you want to check and see what happened, this is an authorize only. So there's really no information because it's just a verification of the card. And then if I just quickly go down to my email program, I should see if my inbox is going to sync. I should see an email come in just a minute. This is the one from before. So while we're waiting for that one, this is the email that I received previously. So this is the customer email that was received because I used that credit card or that email address. So it just basically says your card has been authorized. There's been no charge. In this case, it was a MasterCard that was authorized on the account. So that email will probably come in just a minute. So we'll continue on. But that was the previous one. So that's just showing the customer facing email. Now, that is an authorize only. So the next step might be a few days later or whenever it may be. It might be a deposit. The most typical reason that we see a card being used on an order is to record a deposit. So for example, we take an order from a customer. In this case, we have $1,375. Maybe this order takes a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, whatever it may be to build or ship or receive or whatever it is. So we take a deposit. So let's do that from the charge card menu. So we're going to go to charge card. We're going to use one of the cards that we already have. I could put in a new card number, but I already have two that are available. You can see there is no card number. It's just a bunch of asterisks. So we pick that. We have the expiry date, the address, and everything that was put in. And then we put in the charge amount. So in this case, I will put in a partial charge. I'll do $511.11. In our sample test companies, we always have to do odd numbers. Otherwise, it will do a decline for testing. And I'll put in the card code as best I can remember what I did the first time. And we'll hit charge card. So in this case, the card has actually been charged. It's not an authorize only. If we click here, we could see an authorization code. And we can see the response list is an approved sale. So you get that data. This response list tab is useful mainly if you have a decline. It might help you figure it out. It usually gives you a decline code. Sometimes those are cryptic messages, but if you do a quick search on card codes, you can find out usually why it is. In most cases, it's either A, an address problem, or B, it's some sort of issue with the bank or the issuing bank. So we'll close that window. Now, once we've done that charge, and we click on the Payments tab here, we can see a nested payment that is linked. We just double click. We can drill in. This is a miscellaneous receipt, so it hasn't been matched against the invoice. It does have the order number listed here. And the reason being is because at some later date, I'm going to ship that order. And when I ship that order, it's going to create an invoice. And then I might receive the rest of the payment, net the deposit. So you may post this receipt. And then that receipt is now there and available. So at a later date, I can receive the remainder of the funds. So that's how we could do a deposit typically against an order. Some people might do a full payment, but the trick here is that is a separate transaction. It's a miscellaneous receipt. You have to post it, and it has to be applied to an invoice at some later date. So that's how that works. If I want to return back to the order, I can just click on that hyperlink. We do have the shipments tab, the payments tab available here, and that's showing that that receipt was received. So I'm going to move on from the sales order, and what I'm going to do is just do a quick shipment here. I'm going to modify the order. I'm going to just I'll ship 2 of this line, save it, and then we'll create an invoice. I'm not going to print any forms. So now I've created an invoice, and here's another scenario where you might charge a card. So in this case, if I double click on the shipments tab, we have the unposted invoice. So before releasing the invoice, you may want to charge the card up front. Again, this is something where you're separating the actual invoice payment application and the charging of the card into 2 separate processes. Otherwise, you might post the invoice first. But it just depends on how your business operates. So whether it is the shipping of the order or just from a straight invoice, from the actions menu, you can charge a card, or you could authorize a card. Either one of those options work. So I won't do the charge card in this case because it's just the same as from the sales order. But the difference being is that if I was to do a charge here, I would have an invoice number and an order number linked to that receipt. So that's how that would work. So that's another option. That's not as common as the sales order or the receipt option that I'm about to show you, but it is there for just different processes. So that brings us to the final method, and probably one of the most common ones that we see, with the exception of the deposit on an order, and that is just a straight payment. So a customer calls and says, I would like to pay my invoice by credit card, or you might call them to ask for a payment and they give you a credit card. Either way, this is what we call a normal receipt, or a receipt. Customer's invoice is there, they pay it 30, 40, whatever days later, and rather than receiving a check, you're going to process a credit card. So we'll do that now. So we'll click Add. We'll pick the customer, which is the same customer we're using. We can see here at the bottom that I do have an unapplied miscellaneous receipt with the sales order number nested in brackets, just for a reference point. I'm not going to use that in this case. We'll go down. Now, the receipt number is always a required field, and although it is redundant, what I suggest to people is just type in the credit card if it's going to be paid that way. This is typically where you'd put a check number. You could put in CC for credit card, or Visa, or the check number if it was a check, but in this case, it's not going to be. And then we get to the payment method field. So this is important. So you want to pick how you're processing it. This is a list you build, because we group your receipts, your customer receipts, by day, by type on your bank rec. So if you receive 5 Visa receipts that total $500, your bank will show you a deposit of $500, not 5 separate transactions. So by picking your appropriate payment methods, it filters through to your bank reconciliation, so you will see exactly what your bank statement shows you, and it makes sense. So it's called grouping receipts, and that's something that you do by the payment method. We'll put in the amount. So in this case, I will put in the full amount of the invoice that's there, the one that's dated from November 15th. And I will press tab and allocate. So once that's allocated, I hit save. So I recorded the payment and now I'm going to charge the card. So we click the credit card tab and we go actions, charge card. And again, I could add a new card or I could pick from the list. So I'll use a different card this time. So we have that here. We have the address, Santa's MasterCard. That's a comment. This is a comment that will be saved with the card, but will never be sent as part of the transaction. It's like a reference field. So we'll put into the card code. We'll go down, everything looks good. If you want to put in a little bit extra description here for invoice payment, and I'll just leave it at that, you can, and I'll show you where that comes through. We'll hit charge card. Green means a successful charge. Once again, we have the result at the top and the response list. So if there is a fail, it will be a red bar and it will tell you under the response list, again, in potentially a cryptic way. That's just how the card processing works, of why it was declined, but usually there's a decline number, and again, you could usually sort that out by just finding what that number means. So here we have the result. It's good to go. Now, if I wanted to take this, this receipt and email it, I will do that. I just have to check one thing, make sure that my setting is right here. So we'll go back to the receipt and I'll show you how that works. So if I wanted to take this receipt, I could first of all click here and I could send this just as a PDF file. I could create it, but basically this is a payment receipt. So this receipt here is something that you might get on a credit card printer, although we're using 8.5 by 11 paper. But what it is, it's just designed to show the customer that the payment was received. Some people need a verification that they've used their credit card for a payment because they need to get reimbursed. So this is basically saying, this is the credit card, and it gives just the basic information to identify the card. And then this is the details of what was being paid. So it's a payment receipt, and you can print that, and if you had to, hand it to somebody. You could print a PDF, or you could generate an email. So if I address an email message here, I could send it to Chris Kringle. I can attach a PDF of this receipt. I can use one of my templates, which I don't have set up in my payment processing company, but I could have the template already written, and I could hit compose. And again, if I had a template written, it would already have the text, but I'll just hit compose. And basically what happens is it opens up my email program with a copy of that receipt. Keep in mind, if I had a template, it would already be written. It would have the subject, it would have a message body, and of course, most importantly, it would attach a copy of the payment receipt. So you can easily email that receipt to your customer if need be. So that's how that works. Now, I will go back to my email program just to see if anything has arrived here. And it doesn't look like I'm going to have any luck. I don't know why my emails are not coming in. They were earlier. Oh, well, that explains it. Let's just move them all from the junk. So here is the first receipt that I did, which was the authorization only. Here is the second receipt. And then we'll skip to this one quickly. And we'll take a closer look at this one. So this is the receipt that I had just created. And it gives me, this is from BluePay. So you can't customize this email, but it has enough information that you don't need to email something yourself. So you can see it was a sale, the amount, the card holder, the billing address, the card's encrypted, the email address. And then if you notice particularly down here, it says receipt reference number, but that was the default description. And then I added the comments for invoice payment. So if you wanted to delete and edit that, whatever you put in that comments field will be sent to the customer. So basically, if you want to save time and have your customer notified as soon as a payment's been accepted, you just pop their email address in there and it will email them within a minute of that processed transaction. So you don't have to do it. Some people will do it from Connected. They will email it, or they will email a receipt because it's after the fact of the original charge. But in the end, if you want to just do a live send, you can do it that way. And that's how that works. So we'll close this down and we'll go back to this right here. Now, that's basically how a card is processed in Connected. There's really not much else to it. The last part of using credit cards is basically managing them. And this is more of a customer calls and says, well, the card that you might have or have been using has been compromised. Can you please remove it? And I will give you a new card, or just remove it, or whatever may happen, or it's expired. So in that case, the credit card tab in the customer window will display the basic card information for you to view. And of course the comments. So in this case, I have one comment and I have no comment on the other one. When I look at this, all I can do is view it. So if a customer called, I could correspond with them and give them the information. And then if I hit modify, the only option you have is to delete the card. That's it. So in the event a card was compromised, they want to remove it. They don't want you to try to charge it again, because these are some of the things that might happen. You just simply highlight the card. Are you sure? Yes. And that card is now removed. So simple as that. So that's basically, what card do you have? I want to verify, or I need to remove something. Those are the kinds of inquiries that you might get with regards to that. And that basically rounds out the setup and how to use the processing of the credit cards with BluePay and Connected. So with that, we'll just quickly flip back to the PowerPoint, and I will just show, before we do that, I will bring up the blog about credit card processing. So this is our website, and if you click on articles, then you will go to one of the articles there is myths about credit card processing for small business. And this article really kind of goes through some of the basic stuff, particularly on PCI compliance. If you're not accepting credit cards now and you start, you'll learn about PCI compliance. And if you are already accepting them, you will already know about this. But this goes through some of the basic stuff. And there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And basically, we just want people to have some good information so that they know what is and what isn't PCI compliant, because by not being compliant, you risk your merchant account. Because if you're found to be in violation, you can either get fined or get your account pulled. So it's pretty serious stuff, and it's something that's very, very prominent these days with certain news stories that we hear about breaches in security and data loss. So this is a big deal. So it's not something to be taken lightly. And then just in quick review, if you want to start processing credit cards in Connected, or you are processing credit cards in Connected, this would be a point for both. You want to be using a current version of Connected. We're always doing little tweaks and little changes, not necessarily fixes, usually additions and changes to processes that will make your life easier, make PCI compliance easier. So you want to keep in a current version of Connected, or relatively current. To sign up, you just sign up for a BluePay merchant account. There's a link on our website under services. It says credit card processing. You just click that link and fill in the form and you'll be contacted. If you'd like more of a personal introduction, just feel free to email us and we can set you up with this is what your company does, this is your needs, and we'll get you in touch with somebody if you feel that would be easier because you want more of a personal introduction on your particular company needs. We can certainly do that. We've done that in the past. Then, as we talked about before, you unlock your BluePay credentials in Connected and basically start charging credit cards. It's that easy. It's very quick, and if you set up an account, it usually turns around in 1 to 2 days, so it can be done very quick. Under the Help menu in Connected, you can find the Credit Card Processing with BluePay Appendix. So if I open this up, it brings up a nice document that goes through everything that I've just went through, probably with a little bit more. If I want to sign up for BluePay, I can just simply click this button. It's going to go right to our sign up page on our website, and you just simply click this link and you fill in the form, and that gets the process started.